Hey, students, we made it all the way to week 4. I hope you're enjoying the class. Remember that if you have questions about anything, please, please, please ask me in the classroom. It's totally okay. Or just comment on something. If you have something that you're curious about or something, an author that you've read that you would like to make a comment on that I haven't necessarily covered, that is totally okay. We're talking about 1870 to 1914. I always like to start with a review of what's going on in the world and then what's going on in the United States because that is, the environment that these authors are writing in. And so all of us are affected by what's going on around us. Our views are formed by what's going on in the world around us. So let's see what's going on in the world. First, look here around the world. Lots of change going on in Russia, in Europe, in Africa, in just everywhere around the world. First, we have Franco-Prussian War. Germany wins, and they take some land, Alsace-Lorraine, from France. So this is where we have a lot of international tensions going on in the world. Russia declares war against Turkey. Then we also have the beginning of imperialism. 90% of African territory came under European rule between United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Belgium. So this is imperialism, where nations who have developed quite a strong army, quite a strong military presence, are going in and taking over lands and declaring them under their rule. They start to compete with each other. For example, when British occupies Egypt and gets the Suez Canal, it really angers the French. So you have a lot of tensions going on. We have the Boer War, South Africa, it's the British versus the Dutch and German. And then you come up to 1914, which is leading into World War One. We have Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated visiting Sarajevo. Look, that split the word nephew right in the middle of that's going to drive me crazy if I don't fix it. I know y'all are saying, you don't have to fix this right in the middle of class. Yes, I do, because I'm a proofreader. It's going to drive me crazy. So we have a lot of tensions going on everywhere in the world. It's a competition for land. It's a competition for power. It's a competition for resources. Who can control the world's resources? So, for the United States, I put us in parts of it. I'm going to show some of the more positive things that are going on. The 15th Amendment to the Constitution is declared ratified by the Secretary of State, gave the right to vote to Black Americans. So, race would no longer be considered in voting rights. Now, remember, this is 1870. This is not equal lot rights. Okay. They did have the right to vote. Many states suppressed that and didn't actually give Black people the right to vote. And there's by no means civil rights yet, as far as job equality, who can go in what buildings, anything like that. But it is a start. We have 1871, the first professional baseball league, the National Association debuts. So we've got a lot of cultural change going on in the United States. Metropolitan Museum of Art opens in 1872. 1872, Yellowstone National Park is started. And also Susan B. Anthony casts an illegal ballot, purposely, of course, to prove that women still don't have the right to vote. So this starts the women's suffrage movement. Now, this is a time where the Native Americans are losing a lot of ground. They are losing their land, their homeland. Think back to what I said about imperialism in Europe. It's the same thing going on in the United States. we are using our military strength to take land from others. So we have the Sioux Indian for the first time have a clash, which is part of the Indian Wars. We also still, just to reflect some of the cultural changes, 1874, first typewriter goes on the market. And so the commercial typewriter, people can now type out their manuscripts. Writers are going to have a little bit easier time. 1875, Kentucky Derby is run in the first time. So again, you see the cultural changes. We have imperialism around the world and including the United States. We're taking land from Native Americans, but you also have a lot of cultural changes, a lot of inventions going on. 1876, the original date, ordering all Native Americans onto reservations. So that was a huge policy change in the United States to say we are officially taking control of your lands. We have, if you remember history here, 1877, we have Crazy Horse surrenders to the United States Army in Nebraska as people have been weakened by cold and hunger. 1878 in New Haven, Connecticut, the first commercial telephone exchange is opened. So people are communicating more. 1878, we get the electric companies that start to come into the United States and set up electric power in residences and stores. 1885, we get the Washington Monument. And we also get the Statue of Liberty for the first time, comes into New York Harbor. Now, you see in 1887, some things that you will start to recognize. Pearl Harbor Naval Base is leased by the United States Navy. Wall Street Journal is published in 1889. In 1890, we get the Battle of Wounded Knee in South Dakota. Occurs, it's the last major battle between the United States troops and Native Americans, and hundreds of Native American men, women, and children are slain, and 29 soldiers lost their life. 1892, we get Ellis Island, official immigration center. Lots of immigrants coming from around the world. And in 1896, I know this is an international thing, but we participated in the first modern Olympic Games held in Athens, Greece. 13 nations, including the United States, sent athletes. 1898, the United States annexes the independent Republic of Hawaii. 1902, Cuba gains independence from the United States. 1903, the first cross country automobile trip in the United States is completed. And same year, Wilbur and Orville Wright succeed in a manned plane flight. And 1914, even though this is a tragic year that starts war, I'm going to leave us on with something positive. Babe Ruth makes his Major League Baseball debut. So, what's going on in American literature? We talked about Poe last time and people delving into the imagination and exploring the human mind. This takes a turn back. This is, let's not imagine what the world could be like. Let's really look at how hard life is for a lot of people. It goes into realism and naturalism. Literary realism is a literary movement that represents reality by portraying just mundane, the everyday experiences as they are in real life, what we do from day to day to day. It takes familiar people, places, and stories and really focuses on the middle and lower class of society. The goal is to show how people truthfully live their lives and how they're treated by others. So don't sugarcoat it. Don't show only the rich. Don't show people with the mansions and the love lives. Show how it really is from day to day when people struggle. Realism focuses on details. When you read someone who writes in the realistic style, they really focus on the details to portray the characters in realistic ways. They're looking at the social status and the strengths and weaknesses of both the characters and the world that they live in. So, no sugarcoating whatsoever. Very realistic, looking at the details of what life is. Naturalism is a form of realism. It takes it a little bit further. It's from 1865 to 1900, and it uses detailed realism to suggest that social conditions, heredity, and environment are forces that shape us all. Really takes a scientific approach. Instead of just saying, this is how I see the world, it says, I'm going to study this as an author. I'm going to watch these people. I'm going to really look at society and the people who live there and take a scientific approach to see what causes people to act the way they do. Why are people living the way that they live? So the authors include a carefully detailed presentation of society, and often feature lower class characters in an urban setting and emphasize the effects of heredity and environment. Their characters often act from passion rather than reason and show little insight into their behavior. So the characters are not always realizing what the author is trying to show, and that is that they're being shaped by their social conditions, their heredity, the environment that they live in. So let's look at one of the authors that I'm going to talk about today. Willa Cather is the author of 12 novels, six collection of short fiction, two editions of her book of poetry, April Twilight, and numerous works of nonfiction, journalism, speeches, and letters. Here's a list. Here's a book that's a compilation of some of her novels: O Pioneers, The Song of the Lark, and Alexander's Bridge. She's an American writer known for her novels. In 1923, she was awarded the Pulitzer Prize for One of Ours, which is a novel set during World War One. This is uh, from her legacy. It's from a biographical sketch. Remembered for her depictions of pioneer life in Nebraska, Willa Cather established a reputation for giving breath to the landscape of her fiction. Sensitive to the mannerisms and phrases of the people who inhabited her spaces, think realism here, she brought American regions to life through her loving portrayals of individuals within local cultures. Cather believed that the artist's materials must come from impressions formed before adolescence. Drawing from her childhood in Nebraska, Cather brought to national consciousness the beauty and vastness of the Western Plains. She was able to evoke this sense of place for other regions as well, including the Southwest, Virginia, France, and Quebec. Now, remember, I said that realism and naturalism both use a lot of details. So that's what that was talking about. The details that she gives really bring her settings to life. Here's one of her quotes from the Song of the Lark. Artistic growth is, more than it is anything else, a refining of the sense of truthfulness. The stupid believe that to be truthful is easy. Only the artist, the great artist, knows how difficult it is. Now, thing about realism, truthfulness about everyday life. She's saying it's really hard to do that because we want to go back to our romantic, idealized styles. And these realist authors are saying, no, you've really got to work to be truthful. Here's another quote from My Antonia. But she still had that something which fires the imagination, could still stop one's breath for a moment by a look or a gesture that somehow revealed the meaning in common things. 'Cause she had only to stand in the orchard, to put her hand on a little crab tree and look at the apples, to make you feel the goodness of planting and tending and harvesting at last. All the strong things of her heart came out in her body that had been so tireless in serving generous emotions. It was no wonder that her son stood tall and straight. She was a rich mine of life, like the founders of early races. So, again, lifting up the individual in very realistic ways. Here's a quote: "Let your fiction grow out of the land beneath your feet." Another quote: "The fact that I was a girl never damaged my ambitions to be a pope or an emperor." Remember, this is a time when women are starting to fight for the right to vote, to own land, to gain their equal rights in society. Now, here's what some of our critics said. Uh, Not everyone loved Willa Cather during the time. Some say her works were overly romantic and out of touch with the times, even though she was working towards being realistic. Others applaud her willingness to write about immigrants, using imagery of exile and homelessness. One American scholar said that Cather was perhaps the first to grant immigrants a respectable position in American literature. She wrote about both the beauty and terror in life. She refused to change her style because of her critics. Who else am I going to talk about? Jack London, 1876 to 1916. Here's a copy of The Call of the Wild. Jack London was a 19th century American author and journalist, best known for the adventure novels White Fang and Call of the Wild. A prolific writer, he published more than 50 books over the last 16 years of his life. The titles included The People of the Abyss, offering a scathing critique of capitalism. Think realism here. White Fang, a popular tale about a wild wolf dog being domesticated. And John Barleycorn, a memoir of sorts that detailed his lifelong battle with alcohol. Again, think realism here. He covered the Russo Japanese War in 1904 for Hearst Papers and introduced American readers to Hawaii and the sport of surfing. Here are some of the jobs that he had: oyster pirate. I love Jack London. I mean, really, he did a little bit of everything. He was a poacher in the San Francisco Bay. Because he was a poacher and he learned how to do things illegally, he was actually then hired by the California Fish Patrol to try to stop others. He worked in a cannery, in an electric plant, and in a laundry facility. He was a one semester student at University of California at Berkeley and left college to search for gold. But he wrote 1,000 words every day. He was determined to also be a writer and to realistically write about what was going on in his life and the world around him. And who knows what romance, what adventure, what love is lurking around the next turn of the road, ready to leap out on us if we'll only travel that far. This was in a letter that he put in George Sterling's copy of The Road, the inscription that he signed. I would rather be a superb meteor, every atom of me in a magnificent glow, than a sleepy and permanent planet. Think back to his job list. He did not like to stay in one place very long. He liked to move around. Life is not always a matter of holding good cards, but sometimes playing a poor hand well. Okay, think realism again. He's saying you could still succeed. I'm going to show you realistically how to overcome the challenges of your social situation. He believed it was possible. Not that he was going to show us how. That was probably not the best way to say that, but he realistically put characters in the settings and gave us details about how hard and how challenging that was, and showed us how hard his own life was. Okay, grammar review. Hyphen. Okay, when we say a dash, a hyphen is what most people actually type. But the hyphen is the shortest of the three dashes. There's the hyphen, the N dash, and the M dash. And EN is spelled, N dash is spelled EN and M dash is EM. Here's the only times we should actually use this little bitty short hyphen, though. It serves to separate numbers, account numbers, phone numbers, and to combine words. For example, when you put two words together to make a compound descriptive word, such as brother in law or runner up, or when you put two words together to make one adjective, long term solution, up to date itinerary. That's the only time. This is the minus sign on the keyboard. The only time you should use it are these two examples. Okay? That's the only thing that minus sign besides minus if you're typing a math problem out. So, what is a real dash? When we say the sentence needs a dash, mostly it's the M dash. It's the long dash in punctuation, and that's what most writers simply refer to as a dash. It has a lot of uses. It can replace parentheses, commas, colons, or quotation marks in a sentence. The M dash is used when the writer needs a stronger break for emphasis, and it's also helpful when the sentence would be more complicated to read. If it had, like, if it already has a lot of commas and parentheses in the paragraph and you're going to complicate it by more, use the M dash. I'm going to give you an example. And I know with this font, I wonder if I can pick a different font here and if it shows longer. Let's, there, this shows it as the longer dash. And there's no spaces between around dashes in sentence. It's word dash word, no spaces. We bought dog food, leashes, and dog collars. M dash, items that were all requested by the shelter. M dash, while we were shopping at the new pet store. The pet store, parentheses, the one by our school, had all these items on sale. Now, I chose, instead of to put M dashes in both places, to put parentheses around this phrase and M dashes around this one. I could have switched it. Okay. Remember, M dashes can replace parentheses. When you have a lot of punctuation in a paragraph, you can switch it off so you don't have everything with commas, everything with parentheses, everything with M dashes. But M dashes are used to separate something that could be taken out of the sentence still mean the exact same thing, but you're highlighting it. So I want people to know I didn't just randomly get this stuff. These were items that were requested by the shelter. So I want that information in my sentence, but it needs to be separated from the sentence because it's just bonus information. Does that make sense? You're like, okay, I think I get this. The M dash can also be used to set apart a list at the beginning of a sentence. If a list is at the end of the sentence, you get a colon. Here's the example: napkins, paper plates, and cups. M dash. And again, that doesn't look like an M dash with this. It looks too short. Let's put this back in different font so it shows that it's a long dash. Napkins, paper plates, and cups. These are the things I still need for the class party. That's the M dash. The list is at the beginning. Here's the list at the end. I also need several things for the picnic: colon, chips, drinks, and cookies. The M dash can also be used to mark a change in thought. You're doing creative fiction. I'm going to change this so it shows very clearly that it's the long dash. A character starts to say something I'm ready for, and then they have a break in thought. Oh, wait, I forgot we can't go tonight. That's where the M dash comes. You also put the M dash if you didn't finish that sentence. If somebody interrupts somebody in speech, that's the M dash. Now, what is the N dash? N dashes are shorter than the M dash, but they are longer than the hyphens. The N dash is used to replace the word through. That's the only time the N dash is used. Again, I'm going to see if I can make it a little bit clearer so it doesn't look quite like the hyphen. So anytime we want the word through, it's the N dash. The camp runs June through August. You can still attend our programs May through 10 through 18. So you have three dashes: hyphen, M dash, and N dash. It really does matter. Okay. Most people in your common readers won't know if you use the wrong one. But a professor, a teacher will know and will take off points if you use the wrong dash. Now, here's the thing people who made keyboards, what were they thinking? They didn't know the difference either. They put that minus sign and said, use that as a dash. So most keyboards do not have an M dash or an N dash. You will have to refer to your word processing program on how to enter them into a paper. Most programs have shortcuts, like on my Mac for an M dash, I hit Shift Option and the hyphen, the minus sign, and it'll put my M dash in. And they all should be used without a space before or after them, unless you're using the hyphen as a minus sign. Okay. So if your program does not have the dashes, look it up. Sometimes you have to go under Insert, Special Characters, and then search for N or M dash, and it'll be there. If I'm going to use them a lot, I cut and paste them. But your program also usually has a shortcut. Like if you hit these two buttons, you get the dash. So there you go. Punctuation, grammar review, history review, a little literature review of realism and naturalism. You know, think about again what's going on in the world and why they're writing in that time frame. Lots of changes, but it's not positive for everyone. It's, not everybody could afford electricity. Not everybody could afford a typewriter. So there's positive changes bringing the world forward as far as technology. But in some ways, these writers are also saying life is really hard for a lot of people in this country. And Willa Cather, especially, was one of the first American authors to highlight the life of the immigrants that were coming over and give them their own main characters and saying, there's some beautiful things about these immigrants that are coming over, but their life is also can be very challenging coming to a new nation. So there you go. It's ask questions. Put comments in the classroom. Let me know if there's something that you would like for me to cover. If you've read someone, look up other authors too. Notice I did not put a list this time of who you should read. You explore. Google, Google realistic writers in American literature. Explore a little bit. Find some that you really like. Find some short stories out there. There's some really good options for you to read. All right. Have a good week.